Great. Hello there, math friends. Today we're going to start thinking about what happens when we divide with decimals. And if you have done a lesson similar to this with Mr. Bates, uh, bear with me. You can just count this as review and you will have it down solid. Because we've got kids coming from 5 different classes, we had to kind of pick a starting spot, and that meant some of you might get a couple of days of review. Oh, that's okay. That's good. You'll be in there. You'll know it really well. Okay, so here's our problem that we're going to start thinking about and talking about how to wrap our mind around it. Mr. Kovich is preparing materials for a craft project. He needs to cut 2 meters of string into pieces that are some meter long. How many some meter pieces can he cut from this 2 meters of string? Sorry, I'm on back down. Right, that's really would be about here, 2 meters. Okay. All right, so he's got some string. He's going to cut it into some pieces, and we want to know how many pieces he can get. So here's the deal. Turns out he's got this big old piece of string, and he's going to cut it into pieces that are 2/10 of a meter long. That's about there. So he's starting with this big piece. He's cutting into 2/10 of a meter pieces. I want you to stop and think for a second. Is he going to end up with more than 2 pieces or less than 2 pieces? So he started with 2. He's cutting it into these 2/10 of a meter pieces. It might even help to think about how many of those pieces I could get into 1 meter and then into 2 meters. In fact, let's draw a picture here, because sometimes pictures are super helpful, especially as we're starting to understand what's going on in the math. So this whole string is 2 meters long. We'll make a mark in the middle that shows that's where 1 meter is, right? So that whole thing is 2 meters. Remember, he's cutting pieces that are 2/10 of a meter. So he's got 2/10, 2/10, 2/10. Okay, 2, 4, I'm up to 6/10, another 2/10, that's 8/10, 2 more tenths. Oops. Sorry, guys. Each of these pieces is 2/10. Okay, so if I went 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, well, 10/10 gives me 1 whole. So in one of those pieces, he's already got in one of the meters, he has 5 pieces already. I know that in this other one, I could do the same thing, right? 2/10, 2/10, 2/10, 2/10, 2/10, and you'd have 5 more. And so I can count those up. Those 5 plus 5 more, he ends up with 10 pieces of string. Wow. Okay. So a lot of time, usually with whole numbers, when we divide, our answer ends up being smaller than what we started with. We start with 300 gummy bears, we divide them into groups of 10, we end up with 30 gummy bears, right? Our answer is smaller, our quotient is smaller than the dividend, that big number that we started with at the beginning. But in this case, our pieces that we're making are so small that our quotient actually ends up being bigger. Okay, so take a look here. If he had 2 meters and he wanted to get a 2 meter piece, how many 2 meters are in 2 meters? Well, that's 1. 2 divided by 2 is 1. We've known that for a long time. Any number divided by itself, we're going to get 1. Then when instead he started doing groups of 2/10, he ended up with 10 pieces. And if I made those groups even smaller, 2/100, those are tiny pieces. There's going to be a lot of them in 1 meter. He actually ends up with 100 pieces. Wow. So 2 divided by 2 was just 1. 2 divided by 2/10, my pieces got smaller. My quotient got bigger, right? My divisor got smaller. My quotient got bigger. As my divisor gets even smaller, 10 times smaller, my answer gets 10 times bigger. Wow. All right, friends. I'm going to have you try this problem right here. Pause and try, see what you can do. Draw a picture if you need to, and then come on back. We're going to talk through it. Okay. Same thing. This time I've got 5, and I'm dividing into groups of 2/10. So 2/10, 2/10, 2/10, 2/10, 2/10. Remember, we figured that in one whole, we had 5 of these little 2/10 pieces. I could absolutely draw that over and over and over again, but I know if I have 5 here, I would need to do that again and again and again and again 5 times. So I would end up with 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 pieces. That that quotient is getting big when my pieces are small. Okay, I have a couple of problems for you to try out. Remember, you can absolutely draw a picture to help you. You can also think about the example problems that we've done. You can always come back and review those. Just a couple of problems to try out about as we start thinking about, when I divide and my divisor, my pieces are so small, my answer actually ends up getting bigger.